Hi guys, welcome. It's that time again. It's your boy Rencity, host of Sports and Shorts of Sorts. Doing our thing like we've done all season, breaking down the NBA, but this isn't a usual NBA recap. Not breaking down what happened in the last bit, because you know what? We just had play-ins. We got the playoffs now. Playoffs! We're in the playoffs. So let's do what we got to do. This was a crazy season, not like a regular one. We had our inaugural in-season tournament. We had the break. We had our play-in games, which just went down over the past week. We had a year where superstars' reputations were solidified or maybe tarnished a little bit. And that's what the playoffs are all about. This is where your game's elevated, or this is where you're remembered as a choker, if you would. It's one of my favorite things. I could add it to the Sound of Music song for sure. But we'll quickly go over those play-in games, and I'll break down who I think's going to go on in the first round, and maybe even go a little Nostradamus here, a little Rencity Damus, and see how this is gonna end. So if you're a bettor and you're looking to get some advice, don't hold me against this stuff, right? I watch the game a lot. I've watched a lot, and I've used this podcast as a great excuse to watch even more basketball. So it's really worked out. But let's see how we got here. The way the season ended, all 30 teams involved in 15 games on the last day of the season. I mentioned it last week how crazy it was. There were a lot of teams resting players, but there were a few changes that went down. The Milwaukee Bucks lost to the Orlando Magic, combined with the New York Knicks win in overtime over the Bulls. You had the Knicks jumping up to that second seed, moving the Bucks down to the third spot. Other big outcomes, you had the Lakers beating the Pelicans and the Suns beating the Timberwolves. And with that happening, you had the Pelicans falling into the play-in spot while the Suns clinched the sixth seed. Then you had the Oklahoma City Thunder. They beat up a resting Mavericks team, claiming the number one seed in the West. And the Nuggets beat the Grizzlies, combined with that loss I just mentioned by the Timberwolves to the Suns. You had the Nuggets claiming the second seed in the West. West. Some weird combo of both. But no, they got second seed in the West, while the Wolves fell to third. So those games, they set up our play-in games. You had the Lakers having another game with the Pelicans, a 7th-8th play-in game, and this was an entertaining game. The Lakers looked to have things wrapped up. The Pelicans went on a crazy run with Zion Williamson, putting the team on his very broad back, putting 40 points, 11 rebounds. However, when he made a shot over Anthony Davis, he landed, and you could see him grimacing a bit, and it didn't look very good. He'd leave the game. He had a towel. He threw the towel in frustration as he went to the locker room. And the team didn't necessarily throw in the towel on the court. They were just getting outplayed in the crunch, and the Lakers took the win. LeBron, the ageless wonder right now, one rebound and one assist shy from a 23-point triple-double. AD looked great in his old stomping grounds, getting the occasional boo from his former fans. Like I said, a great game that lost some of its luster when Zion had to leave that game. So with that win, the Lakers clinched the 7th spot in the West, and the Pelicans would host the winner of the following play-in game, which was Sacramento Kings hosting the Golden State Warriors in the 9-10th game. This game was close early, but then the Kings stretched their lead out. And despite the buzzing of that home crowd they have in Sacramento, the Warriors kept fighting. And in the third quarter, Steph Curry hit a three to make it a 1-point game. You're like, whoa, what's going to happen here? But from that point on, it was all Sacramento. All their starters hit double digits. Keegan Murray leading the way with 32 points. He had a great night, leaving the Warriors in the dust as they went on this huge run, like I said, winning by 24 points in the end. A brutal loss for the Warriors, who had a very rough season all in all. Klay Thompson especially, he shot 0 for 10 in that game, 0 for 6 from downtown, not very Splash Brother-esque. A lot of questions surrounding that team entering the offseason. Steph Curry's 36 now, and you have to wonder what's going to be left of this Warriors team next season. What direction are they going to go in? Lots of questions for them. The next night, we had our Eastern play-in games. Philadelphia hosting Miami in that 7th-8th spot. Another exciting game. At one point, you were wondering if either team would get to 100 points. Jimmy Butler used an awesome head fake. Remind me of my boy Stu Hulsel back in the day with his pump fakes, getting Kelly Oubre in the air. And as Oubre landed, he landed right on Jimmy's leg. He continued, but you could tell he was limited. despite that, the Heat were winning, and the Sixers were missing some bad shots. Tobias Harris, especially, he had some bricks. Remind me of that movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's like, "Let it rain, make it rain," and it was just brutal. But anyway, it was tough going, but the Sixers stuck with it, and the Heat. They would inspire the Sixers crowds in the weirdest way. Caleb Martin went to the free throw line, missed both free throws, and when you miss two in a row at the line, the entire arena, whoever has a ticket, gets free chicken from a local place in Philly. And that strangely got the crowd going, and the Sixers fed off it. They were starting to go on a run, then they were going punch for punch with the Heat. Biggest X factor, and the playoffs are full of X factors. Frick, Nicholas Batum, the Frenchman, the 35-year-old, 16th season in the NBA, looking like a youngster, cashing threes, blocking shots. His defensive pressure really set the tone. And like Tyler Hero had a bad shooting night, but he hit some deep threes to make it close. And Buddy Hield was big for the Sixers. Rookie Yama Yaka for the Heat. He was on the floor in the biggest moments, showing that he can play in those biggest moments, even as a rookie. Very entertaining game where the Sixers would prevail on their home court barely, but they'd clinch the 7th seed in the East. And the Miami Heat would face the winner of the 9-10th game, which would happen to be between the Hawks and the Bulls. The Bulls hosted the Hawks in this very high-scoring first half where it looked like it could go either way. Bulls jumped out to a huge lead, but the Hawks stormed back, and the Bulls were up 73-67 at half. But from there, the Bulls would really take over, increasing their lead while really dominating the game. Everyone on the Bulls were playing great. No one greater than Kobe White, though, scoring a career-high 42 points in the game as the Bulls would win by 15 and set up a battle with the Heat. But like I said, it was a career high for Kobe White, but is it really, though? I guess play-in numbers don't really count, per se. So is it a career high? Kobe White said it is. He's like, I can see it on the paper. I scored 42. I'm counting it. So good for them, but brutal way for the Hawks to enter the offseason. They got to do something with the Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. They're not going to make it together. That they've tried it. That experiment has failed, Like Aaliyah said, you got to try again, So we'll see what happens with the Hawks. One of them are going to go who, where, why, when. We'll find out, I imagine, in the offseason. So before we had our last matchup set in each conference, like I said, we had our 7th seed figured out. We had to figure out who's going to get those 8 seed. And that's why the games went down Friday, which is why I'm recording this early Saturday to get this to the internet before the games go down. But let's do it. So Miami Heat were hosting the Bulls, like I said, for that last spot in the East. And they were without their leader. I mentioned Jimmy Butler picking up that right leg injury there. And he... MCL sprain is going to keep him out for a bit, so he was missing the game, and despite his absence, the Heat jumped out to an early lead on the Bulls, going up 34-17 after one quarter, and that really set the tone for the game, and despite any comeback from the Bulls, the Heat would answer, Kobe White, who was huge in that game against the Hawks, really disappeared in this one, and no one picked up that slack. Bulls missed a lot of makeable shots. Vucevic, sorry to point out one guy, but Tyler Hero made up for his bad shooting night the game prior, putting up 24 points, 10 boards, 9 dimes, just missing out on a triple-double. And big shout-out again to Yame Yakas Jr., that rookie, 21 points, 6 dimes, 6 boards. Earlier in the season, I was saying how great this guy was as a rookie. He was overshadowed, obviously, by Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama, but his minutes dipped a bit when the acquisition of Terry Rozier, who... He's been injured a bit now, and I think it kind of helps them having Yakas Jr. in the lineup a little more. I know that the scoring punch from Rozier is big, but I think Yakas Jr. on the floor is big for them, and it really showed as they took the win there. So that brings us to our last playing game, the finish off our bracket, the Pelicans hosting the Sacramento Kings for that 8th seed. For the game, it was announced Zion Williamson would not play. That injury he picked up in the loss to the Lakers turned out to be a left hamstring strain, and it's not sure when he'll come back. It depends on if the Pelicans even advance and go from there, but that's how the game would start. The game started close, but the Pelicans would distance themselves a bit. Kings trying to come back, but never getting over the top. De'Aaron Fox played great for the Kings. Fantastic guard, did what he could, but Keegan Murray's scoring dropped off, and he really made the difference in that last game, and everybody kind of forgot about the absences. Those 6 man of the year should-be winner, Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter. You could definitely tell they were not there. Sabonis, his numbers, I don't think were where they needed to be in a clinching game, and For the Pelicans, like I said, no Zion, but Brandon Ingram and former Raptor Jonas Valanciunas really stepped up in Zion's absence, and three dudes off the bench, Jose Grand Theft Alvarado, Marshall, and Nance Jr. all hit double figures off the bench, and the Pelicans secured that 8th seed in the West. And for the Kings, it's a step back from last season when they surprised people and got to that third place and going into the playoffs. And then a few weeks ago, it looked like this team was safe, but the West is so tough, and they fell into the play-in spots and ultimately fell out of the playoffs. Everyone said, well, how can this team be so good and have no all-stars? Well, maybe they shouldn't have been. I mean, that's tough. Sabonis led the league in triple-doubles and double-doubles. But man, they'll be sitting at home watching the playoffs now. So I've been a fan of the playing games. I like how there's more teams going for it rather than tanking. So I'm about that little pre-drama before the main drama, which is the NBA playoffs, which we're getting to right meow. Started all my NBA recaps starting out East, so why change now? We'll start with the number 1 versus number 8 East matchup, starting with the team with a NBA high 64 wins this season. The Boston Celtics hosting the before-mentioned Miami Heat, who secured that 8th seed through the play-in games. I've talked on this podcast many times how I believe the Celtics have the best starting 5 in the NBA, and it's title or bust for them. Saying that, I know the Miami Heat have been known as thorns of the NBA playoffs, shocking the Bucks in the first round last year's NBA playoffs before going all the way to the finals. However, I did mention that injury to Jimmy Buckets he picked up, and it's going to keep him sidelined a few weeks, It's Jimmy Butler. Maybe he'll just pop up and be like, I'm healed. But this Heat team's really deep. They're playoff tested. They have some bad blood with the Celtics as well, so expecting this to be fiery right out of the gates, but I'm seeing the Celtics prevailing in this one. I'm not trying to undersell the Heat at all. I'm just saying this Celtics team, they're the team to beat right now in the East. I see them winning in 5 games. I know the regular season's a different beast than the postseason. The Celtics owned all the games, beating them 3 out of 3 times, Expecting tough games, but I'm expecting the Celtics to win. Like I said, in 5 games, maybe a sweep, but I'm thinking 5 games. Instead of jumping that 2 seed, we'll jump to the 4-5 because the winner of that series will play the winner of the 1-8 series, which I have picked as the Celtics. So the 4-5 spot, you have the Cleveland Cavaliers hosting the Southeast Division winning Orlando Magic. So be a damn good series. 2 teams that are young and hungry, like I used to be at one point. Now I'm just hungry. But both teams have fantastic young cores. They're looking to do some damage in the playoffs. The Magic's young all-star, Paulo Banchero, he's the true leader of this team. He's the real deal. Worthy of the number 1 pick, all that jazz, all that magic, he's the real deal. They're deep. They're tough. They could have anybody being that secondary scorer. It was Franz Wagner most of the year, but coming back from injury, he's kind of been a little off. But if he can be that number 2 punch to Banchero, we're gonna have some big damage here for the Cavaliers because Suggs or Cole Anthony, they could step up. Either of those guys could be that guy. And the Magic, they're a good team. They're a damn good young team because they play defense. And like every coach, if you played basketball, has preached to you, if you play good defense, you're in the game. And because they do that, they're in the game. They have punches from everybody. But that Jonathan Isaac, now that we've seen him healthy and what he can do on the defensive floor, he's a game changer. Doesn't always get big minutes, but he can impact the game, especially on that defensive side. So let's not undersell the Cavaliers, though, on the defensive side. Their inside 1-2 punch, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, one of, if not the best 1-2 inside punches in the NBA, especially on that defensive side. They're just as deep as the Magic, and they could have surprise scorers each night. They'll be missing Dean Wade off the bench as he's dealing with a knee injury. But they have guys that could step up. Niang, 6th Man of the Year candidate, Karis LeVert. They have guys, Sam Merrill, the guy is a flamethrower when he gets time to shoot out there. But the real game changer for the series changer is Donovan Mitchell. He's the guy that's seen playoff experience, right? We've seen him drop 57 points in the playoffs going up in a duel against Jamal Murray. So I think this series will go 6 or 7. Probably 6, with the Cavaliers pulling it out. And you've heard me say it on this before, tons of times on this show. You have to lose before you can win in the NBA. And I see the Magic taking this lump. A young team, they got to take your lumps. But I see them taking this lump, losing the series in a tough battle. I see some great playoff performances coming, but I see the Cavaliers prevailing and winning this in series, advancing to the second round. The next series in the East, you have an all-Central Division bout. Division winning number 3 seeded Milwaukee Bucks hosting the number 6 seeded Indiana Pacers. Two teams very familiar with each other. They played each other 5 times this past season, 4 regular season games, and an in-season tournament semifinal where the Pacers won. Pacers are 4-1 against the Bucks this season, and Milwaukee's coming into this series without Giannis Antetokounmpo. The former MVP is still dealing with that scary calf injury he picked up against the Celtics. And this team kind of goes as Giannis goes. This is going to give a Pacers team that is feeling confident even more confidence. It said All-Star Damian Lillard's poised to return for the Bucks. I know Middleton's been back. And before the season, I said the Bucks were going to win the NBA championship with new coach Adrian Griffin. A lot has happened since then. We, of course, know Adrian Griffin was dismissed of his work. Doc Rivers was brought in, finishing the season with a losing record. Not ideal. But the Bucks still did get that 3rd seed, but it's going to be tough. This Pacers team, they're wild cards. They have that 1-2 punch, Tyrese Halliburton. Earlier in the season, I was like, who's going to be that number 2 scorer? Before the season started, I picked Benedict Mathurin to win Most Improved Player. We know he was stepping his game up before he had that season-ending labrum injury, which required surgery. But the Pacers went out. They got Pascal Siakam, and what a 1-2 that's been with Halliburton. We know what Spicy P can do in the playoffs. If you followed the Raptors, you've seen Spicy P in the playoffs. He's the real deal. And I hate to say this if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, but this is trending to a first-round upset, you know? Like I said before the season, I said the Bucks will win the title. Damian Lillard coming in. Things have changed. I see the Pacers knocking the Bucks out, adding another stain on Doc Rivers' resume, which is picking up a lot of stains lately, but Pacers are going to light it up. They're going to upset the Bucks, winning in 6 games, giving the Bucks back-to-back first-round upsets. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm thinking the Pacers are going to take that. Just saying. But this brings us to our last and most juiciest playoff series in the Eastern Conference. The number 2 seeded New York Knicks taking on the number 7 Philadelphia 76ers. Two of the largest and craziest fan bases in the NBA, and two teams very hungry for an NBA championship. This should be one hell of a series. Joel Embiid, he's still looking to get in game shape. He's holding his shorts in a game like I used to, but he's on the floor, and that's all that matters. He's such a difference maker for this Sixers team, and if he was playing all season, I imagine they'd be higher than the 7th seed. And if it wasn't for All-Star Tyrese Maxey, the Sixers probably would have missed the playoffs altogether. So now, you know, they're both on the floor, and that's got to put some worry into the Knicks here. But luckily for the Knicks, they have a slew of big bodies who are finally healthy now to throw at Embiid as needed. Isaiah Hartenstein, Precious Achua, Mitchell Robinson's back and getting back in the game shape. That's something not a lot of teams have, that many big, talented dudes to throw at Embiid. You know, and they all bring something a little different. The Sixers have shooters surrounding Embiid, and the minutes they had, you know, to try to stay afloat in the East, that's really helped them going a long way. And, you know, Buddy Hield, I'm happy for this dude. He can get crossed off that list of most games played without a playoff game. 632 games he had suited up before getting some postseason experience, and he'll be playing in it, so I'm glad for him. And I mentioned last episode how him getting more time with Embiid, that's going to help them develop. Like, Buddy Hield's been one of the best shooters in the league since he came into the league. Combine that with Embiid, that's good math right there, quick maths. Plus that deadline acquisition of Kyle Lowry, you know, having him reunite with former head coach Nick Nurse, that's got to be good for them. And enough for the Sixers talk, though. Let's talk some Knicks here. I barely mentioned them. They have their 1A star, as Becky Hammond puts it, Jalen Brunson, who has looked like the best player in the NBA to finish the season. That stretch to wrap up the season and clinch the number 2 seed. Like I said, no one's been looking better than Jalen Brunson. So, I mean, they weren't rewarded very nicely, having to face the Philadelphia Sixers and the 76ers in the first round. But they got a lot to worry about with Embiid and Maxey, but OG Anunoby is healthy again for the Knicks, and when he suits up, the Knicks just kind of win, you know? What they do defensively is huge. And I mentioned that combination of Lowry and Nurse for the Sixers. They are very aware of the havoc that OG Anunoby can present on the defensive end. This is one of my favorite series to look forward to, and it's one of the hardest for me to predict. I mean, it's a damn near coin flip because it could go really any way. But to feed into the Hollywood drama, I'm going to have the New York Knicks winning in overtime in Game 7 in front of the Madison Square Garden crowd, which is going to be on the verge of exploding off the roof with excitement. So that's how I have it. Knicks in 7 over the Sixers. So that'll bring us out west, and we'll start with the number 1 seeded Oklahoma City Thunder hosting the before mentioned New Orleans Pelicans, who clinched that 8th seed through the play-in. Very intriguing series. The Thunder won the season series 2-1. And the Thunder clinched the Western Conference on the last day of the season, and they're the youngest team in NBA history to accomplish such a feat. They have a date with the Pelicans, who, like I said, they'll be missing their main guy, Zion Williamson, to start the playoffs, and still unsure on when he'll be coming back. But it's trending to him not playing in this series. The Thunder have MVP favorite and Canadian, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and with him they are in every game. Combined with secondary scorer, premier scorer, J-Dub, Jalen Williams, rookie Chet Holmgren, he's been developing, and this will be obviously his first sniff of the playoffs. So this team can score when they need to, and much like I said about the Magic, the Thunder do play good defense, especially Lou Dort, another Canadian. This team's the real deal. They deserve that number 1 spot. They've been up there the whole year. However, when we talk Pelicans, this is a team that fell into the play-in spots down the stretch. They're a damn good team, and I know they're missing Zion, but elsewhere, they're pretty healthy. You know, they're coming together, and this team has length. They have closers. Brandon Ingram, he showed what he could do down the stretch against the Kings there, and his length can't be reached by Dort. I know Dort can close out, but he's not getting up to where Ingram is there. You have to think CJ McCollum can't continue to shoot as bad as he has lately. If he starts to wake up, it's going to be scary for the Thunder. And I think the Thunder will win, you know. But I see this going to 7 games with OKC and their faithful helping to get this young team through the first round into the second round. Which brings us to the number 4 matchup in the West. The winner of this series could wind up winning the NBA championship. The Los Angeles Clippers hosting the Dallas Mavericks. And this should be one hell of a series. Some bad blood between these two teams. They'll be meeting the postseason for the 3rd time in 5 years. Dallas won the first match of the season, but the Clippers won the next 2. And like I said, 2 of the best teams in the NBA when healthy, and they've dealt with injury issues a lot of the time this season. But like I said, a lot of episodes this season, the one thing that can hurt the Clippers is themselves and their injury status. And right now, Kawhi Leonard, he's coming into game 1 with the questionable tag. His knee inflammation has flared up over the last few weeks, and there's uncertainty that he will play or not. I imagine he'll suit up, if not in game 1, at least in game 2. And I know the Clippers can still battle without their multiple-time winning NBA Finals MVP winner, but I don't know if they can beat the Mavericks without him. And I'll tell you why. That 1-2 punch, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, it's probably the best in the NBA. I believe they are the best, right? People doubted if these dudes could play together. They've really showed out. When they're rolling, they can beat anyone. They have the best team built around Luka Doncic, and I think his entire career. He's played with guys like Porzingis and the before-mentioned Jalen Brunson, but I think this core, this combo of Kyrie Irving, rookie, Derek Lively, P.J. Washington, Gafford, those acquisitions were used. Tim Hardaway Jr., Dante Exum are healthy. I think they can do enough to win this series, and I expect them to win it in 6 and advance to the second round. And I'm only saying this because of the Kawhi injury. And I know they're not the same, and I'm not just trying to knock the Clippers. I'm just saying this Mavericks team right now, they're good, and I see them winning it in 6. But I've mentioned X Factors, not X-Pac, but X Factors, and the biggest X Factor is a future Hall of Famer coming off the bench for the Clippers. People mock him, call him Westbrook here and there, but Russell Westbrook's former MVP in this league. Like I said, a future Hall of Famer. He and Harden are trying to put a little more respect on their names. So Westbrook especially could really change this series and have them beating the Mavericks and making me look dumb. But this year I have the Mavericks advancing to the second round to take on the Thunder. The next series in the West, the number 3 Minnesota Timberwolves and number 6 Phoenix Suns. The Suns beat the Wolves on the last day of the season to avoid playing games. The Suns went 3-0 against the Wolves this past season, and these two teams got into it a bit, a little trash talk, a little chippiness to end the season. I'm expecting this series to have the same kind of fieriness to end the year throughout the series. Timberwolves are the best defensive team in the NBA, and they'll be tested taking on that big 3 of Durant, Booker, and Beal. And the Timberwolves are in a bit of unusual territory. They haven't hosted a first round playoff series since 2004. Their leader Anthony Edwards was only 3 years old when that happened, so it's been a while. I've been beating this dead horse all episode, but in the NBA, you gotta lose before you can win. So is this the losing portion for young star Anthony Edwards? It's going to be tough to say. Karl Anthony Towns has returned to the lineup late in the season as he's trying to get back in the game shape as well. Underrated Naz Reid has been killing it on the floor, but the Suns, they got killers all over the floor. I mentioned that big three, but I've mentioned on previous episodes it could be someone outside of that big three that is the biggest difference maker for the Suns, and I'm talking about Grayson Allen. They just extended the dude to a huge extension. Can he be that reliable shot maker he's been all season? Or will he, crumble in the playoffs as some guys do? I'm expecting the Dookie to make some shots and hand the Wolves a Dookie as they drop and get upset in this series. That's right. I have the Suns winning in 6 games, giving Edwards his first taste of playoff loss as being a favorite. It happens to youngins throughout their career. We'll see how the Wolves bounce back from that. They already surprised me this season with how well they did. Maybe they'll surprise me again and beat the Suns. But I have the Suns knocking the Wolves out. Which brings us to our last first round series in the West. The number 2 seed, defending champion, Denver Nuggets, the jersey I'm wearing here. The Nuggets host the number 7th seeded, Los Angeles Lakers, who earned that spot via the play-in games. And their reward is the Denver Nuggets, a team that has beaten the Lakers 8 times in a row, 4 times this past season, and then 4 games going back to last season's Western Conference Finals, where the Nuggets swept the Lakers. But what can I say about the Nuggets? Jokic may have earned a 3rd MVP trophy, and his team shares a win-loss record with the number 1 seeded OKC Thunder. They have most of the same core that raised the Larry O'Brien trophy last year, and they're very poised to do it again. The key's Jamal Murray. We've seen Jokic in the playoffs with and without Murray, and there's a big difference, With one, they win a title, right? So all the deserved praise going to the Nuggets is valid. So what can Darvin Ham and the Lakers do to stop Jokic and win against the Nuggets? It's an uphill battle and then some. This is the healthiest we've seen Anthony Davis in some time, or ever, really. And I think he's going to have the most pressure on him to try to stop Jokic. He hasn't done it yet. He's going to have to try again. Maybe this is where the athletic Jackson Hayes can get some more minutes, because we've seen, McGee and Howard with that combination with the Lakers. You get big athletic dudes. Seems to be you're never going to stop Jokic, but that might slow him a bit. Jackson Hayes isn't as big as those dudes I mentioned, but he's athletic. But he might bite on all his fakes. So it's a tough one. Jokic is a tough dude, but he might make Jackson foul out, but Jackson Hayes has to make his minutes and all his fouls count. And before the season, I had the Lakers going to the finals and losing to the Bucks, but I might have to ditch Rencity's preseason choice because I have the Nuggets winning the series in 5. So the Lakers will finally beat the Nuggets once, but I have them losing the series, and the Nuggets will advance. So those are my first round predictions. I'll chime in with NBA recaps as the playoffs go, but to really get shit wild, I'm going to call the rest of the playoffs from my first round predictions and see how I mentioned in the East I have the Celtics advancing to take on the Cavs, and I have the Pacers advancing to take on the Knicks. I have the Celtics beating the Cavaliers in 6 games and make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they'll be taking on the New York Knicks, who I have knocking out the Pacers in 5 games, setting up an Eastern Conference showdown that the NBA script writers would love. 2 Eastern Conference rivals of yesteryear. I have the Celtics winning that in 6, advancing to the NBA Finals to represent the East. Out West, I mentioned I have the Thunder beating the Pelicans and the Mavericks beating the Clippers, setting up a fun second round between the young Thunder and star-studded Mavs. Thunder won the season series, but the last game, the Mavs rested everyone. So in my hypothetical playoff series here, we go back and forth with 2 MVP candidates, SGA and Luka Doncic going head-to-head. But I have the series going to 5 games, where I have the veteran Dallas Mavericks winning and knocking out the number 1 seeded Thunder. Like I said, back and forth, but it's going to come down to my statement I've been pushing all episode. You got to lose before you can win, and they're the youngest team that ever clinched the number 1 seed, and I have them losing like I said, to the Mavericks in the second round, but I have them coming back even stronger next season, which is wild to say because they just had the number one seed. But this Thunder team's looking towards a dynasty. I just don't see it happening this year for them, as the Mavericks will beat them and advance to the Western Conference Finals. I mentioned how I have the Suns knocking out the Timberwolves and the Nuggets knocking out the Lakers, setting up a really fun second round matchup between the Suns and Nuggets, a rematch of last year's second round series. I'm going to expect another tough series with the Suns' big three having huge nights. Suns played the Nuggets great all year, and you know the Nuggets cast off, Yusuf Nurkic, loves to try and stick it to his former team and teammate. I mean, you can't blame him for trying to stick it to Jokic. And Jokic, you can't blame the Nuggets for keeping Jokic. He's the better choice of the two. But it probably stings Nurkic a bit. And you can always see him trying to jab it to him. But I see this game going the distance. I see it going to 7, where the defending champions will show off their championship pedigree, winning the seventh and deciding game on home court, setting out an outrageous battle between two of Europe's greatest, Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic. I think this could be one of the greatest Western Conference Finals we've seen in some time. The defending champion Nuggets hosting these Dallas Mavericks. I know I'm setting a crazy high bar for a series that may or may not even happen, but I think if this series does happen, it's going to go to 7, where who else but non-European, but American Kyrie Irving stepping up, clinching the series for the Mavericks, punching the Mavericks tickets to the NBA Finals. Let me take this Nuggets jersey off. Oh, what's beneath it? A Mavericks jersey. That's right, because I have the Mavericks going back to the finals, like I said, for the first time since they won it in 2011. And what an NBA Finals Rencity has painted for y'all. The Celtics hosting the Mavericks, a series that will entertain the masses with young stars and former teammates all over. Former Maverick Kristaps Porzingis, former Celtic Kyrie Irving, a finals for the ages. And the first time we'd get to see Luka Doncic in the finals. Fortunately for him, though, I have the Celtics finally getting over the hump. Let me take this Mavericks jersey off. That's right, there's a Celtics jersey below it. I have the Celtics. Jason Tatum finally getting his Kobe Bryant moment, his hero, and his partner in crime, Jaylen Brown, silencing the critics as this team raises the Larry O'Brien Trophy, bringing the 18th NBA championship to the city of Boston, silencing everyone that says Boston has been irrelevant in sports in this basketball game here, like Gilbert Arenas. But I see Jason Tatum winning Finals MVP and getting that massive monkey off his back. Well, there you have it, guys. This is what's going to happen in the NBA playoffs as I see it. Sounds legit. Do you have anything wrong with that? Let me know, man. Who do you guys got winning all this? You're going to hear Rencity chiming in throughout the playoffs. It's going to be fun. Can't wait to see how it ends up. Thanks for coming along, tuning in. Hopefully you're enjoying the games. Rencity out.